Can you really retire early? That's a great question. And to answer it, I'm very fortunate to bring into the studio again with us is Nancy Anderson, certified financial planner. And she works for KeyBank in Salt Lake City, Utah, 25 years experience in the financial field. She contributes to Forbes.com in the personal finance and retirement planning area. So happy to have her again with us in the studio. Welcome, Nancy.
Thanks for having me. It's great
Glad
to
to have
here.
you with us. Yes, very much. Excellent. Well, so we've got another very important topic for you and I to talk about. And this is one that I know you get a lot of questions about. I get a lot of questions about. In fact, it's the American dream to retire early, whatever that means. Because we're getting to a point in our human history where we're living longer, a lot longer. And so retiring early, ironically, might mean retiring as our ancestors did maybe at the time. But for people who want to say, look, how do I retire early? What are some, first of all, is it doable absent winning the lottery?
Guess what? The answer is yes. It's doable.
That's all you need to know, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so it's doable.
I've got to give you a caveat, though.
There's a caveat, okay. There's always a catch.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
Okay.
Right?
So you have to be, I'm going to go out on a limb here. You got to be disciplined. You got to be careful. You've got to be prudent. You got to make some sacrifices.
And do some planning.
Planning.
Yeah. But it's totally worth it. And you talked about retirement. It's like, what is retirement?
What does that mean?
Yeah. So the number one question I get from my clients is, am I able to retire?
Okay.
But a lot of people don't want to.
But they want to know they can.
Yeah, they want to know they can.
I would
Financial
imagine,
freedom.
Yeah, I imagine for a lot of people that changes the way they view their work. You know, if I get up in the morning and I go, I don't really have to go to work today if I don't want to, it might change the way I view that work. Like, or does it enable people, in your experience, to maybe make that career change they've always wanted to make?
Most definitely. Maybe they want to move to a different destination, and they can maybe downsize, or what do they call it, downshift?
Yeah, right-sizing, downsizing?
Downshift a little bit, and maybe make a little bit less, but move to, well, I live in Park City. I work in Salt Lake, but I live in Park City, Utah, and there are a lot of people want to live there. It's wonderful, the Four Seasons and all that. Or, you know, here in Daytona Beach, same thing. People want to move here.
Sure.
So if you have the financial freedom knowing that you can retire, it can make a difference in your existing work. It can add some more passion. Like, you know what? I think I want to stay.
Yeah.
And I want to maybe take some risks in my position that you might not have been able to take.
Good point.
If you were worried about you needed that job. But when you don't need the job and you can flip the switch, it can really change your life.
Now, Nancy and I aren't counselors, but in the financial planning work that we do, we find ourselves counseling people a lot. We have to have a little bit of that psychological perspective because, you know, the ironic thing about building a financial plan is that by having a plan, it lets you take a different perspective. And that's why, of course, you and I signed up for this, is that you can view the work or what you're doing with a perspective that, you know, it's going to be okay. And even if you end up working longer, like you say, you've got that plan in place that only gets better.
Yeah, some people haven't planned at all. Like they're just starting maybe at 50 and they think, oh, there's no way that I could retire at 65 or 67 or whatever. But the main thing is the steps that you take will always help you move forward, so it doesn't matter. But people can actually retire early, and one of my neighbors just did.
Yeah, you've got somebody you just worked with.
Yeah, so it's actually my neighbor, and she just retired at age 52, which is really rare these days.
That's rare.
Yeah. So her name is Sybil. So we had an open house, so I invited her over, and I said, Dish, I want to know.
How'd you do it?
How'd you do it?
Yeah.
And my readers on Forbes, and obviously we all want to know how she did it, that it's rare.
Right.
And that was pretty exciting. She had a lot of information in terms of like, well, you know, how do you do it? And so I think you're going to ask me the question, so I'll just jump in. But the number one thing was that it wasn't one thing. It was a series of steps that she took.
So she made the decision, or she thought ahead about what she wanted to do. She then put herself on a path of deliberately doing certain things and not doing others to position her to where she could make this shift.
Exactly. You said the path. The path started for her 20 years prior. So she's at 32.
Okay.
Which is also kind of rare And so she went to see a financial planner and found a good one. And she went to see him about life insurance. And he said, well, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And she said, well, I want to retire early. And he said, well, let's make a plan to do that.
Yeah.
So she started, instead of just buying life insurance, that meeting with that planner changed her life, which is so exciting for us as planners.
Totally.
Because
That's what we signed up for.
that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
So she started a plan to retire early.
And you don't have to do it at 30. I want to make sure the viewers know. You don't have to do it at 30
Yeah.
if you're starting at 35, 40, 50, whatever. The sooner you start, the better off you are. And a lot of our viewers are retired already. And so they say, well, hey, do I need to turn the channel? Why am I listening to this? You still want to think about these things and make sure that the steps you take now are going to serve you well in the long term, and some of the things that we need to think about. And I get a lot of questions, and we'll get into some of because this is not all peaches and cream. There are some sacrifices, there are some important decisions you need to make, and we need to get into those with Nancy. So one of the things for people who are, not at 30 planning this, but maybe they're at 60 saying, okay, look, I've never worked with a financial planner before. I have this happen, and I'm sure you do. They come in, they say, what do I do? How do I, I got a long road, how do I get there? I'm not even sure where I am and how to get where I want to be. So one of the big things is going to be how you will take Social Security. And this is a big one if you're going to retire early. The earliest you can take Social Security under current law is 62. Mm-hmm. If you do that, you're going to take a reduction. Okay, so this is an important part. So I imagine when you work with the folks that you've seen retire early, Nancy, that getting to 62 or getting to 65 for Medicare qualification was a big part. You've got to be able to bridge that gap.
Yeah, you're right. On the Social Security planning, every year that you delay, the value or your monthly income goes up by 8%.
8%.
So so if you can self-fund those earlier years, that gap, that can make a difference if you can delay.
Well, I think that the key thing, and I know you and I have talked about this many times, is it's so individualized. You have to look at your situation. I've had people come in and meet with me, and I'm sure you have too, Nancy, where they don't buy green bananas. I mean, they're like, oh, I'm not going to make it to 90. You're crazy. Yeah. I'm not going to live. Everybody dies by 70. You have to look at your individual situation. If you've got a history of longevity, well, you might be very well served by waiting and do, as you said, fill in those gaps. But if you don't have a lot of longevity in your family and you know your own personal health is not really going to support that longer life expectancy, then it does make sense maybe to take Social Security earlier. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's one of the pieces of the financial puzzle, but just in terms of income streams, the Social Security can make a big difference. The Social Security planning, and that's where, I hate to toot our own horns here, David.
That's okay, you can do it a little bit.
Yeah, working with the planner. Working with the planner makes a difference because we can map it out for you and look at, should you take it here, should you take it there, what difference would that make? Yeah, it does make a difference.
Well, and if you're going to do that, if you're going to pursue this goal of retiring early, you're going to have to bridge to 62, at least for Social Security, and bridge to 65 for Medicare. Yeah. So one of the big things as we look at people who want to make this shift, and we spoke about it earlier, maybe they look at their employment arrangement differently. Maybe part of working with their employer on their work plan for the rest of the time they'll be with the company is to maybe negotiate health insurance and maybe working part-time so that you can get, because if you shop health insurance, it's, for people who have done that, it's so expensive, even with all the attempts at healthcare reform. It's so expensive, and it becomes a very large number that as planners, we have to try to figure out how people pay for. So if you can just get to Medicare 65, that's gold. So if you can work part-time or you can find a way to have that health insurance cover, check with your employer, look at your spouse's plan if you're married, take COBRA, whatever, get there however you can to bridge that gap.
So in our case, the example I gave of Sybil is she and her husband are staggering their retirements just for that reason, David. So he's going to retire, well, they'll still have a gap, but he's going to retire at 60. She's retiring at 52, but she's still on his medical. That makes a difference. Also, we have a lot of clients who will work, cut down, downshift with their company and do a part-time for medical. And then there's a lot of people in Park City, Utah, that work part-time at a ski
Can't imagine
resort,
why.
ski resort, or even a coffee shop for the medical, because
Yeah.
they enjoy it, they get a little bit of extra income, but that can make a difference too.
That's
So
excellent.
it can be done, but you, like I said, that's part of not being easy. Like when you think retirement, you think, well, that means not working.
People think of it as a cliff, like you go over the cliff and you're done. It doesn't have to be.
Right.
It can be a long sloping downhill, kind of like a ski
Yes.
slope where you kind of go down
Yeah.
slowly. What they call that, the bunny slopes. So go
Yes,
down the bunny
yes,
slope
yes.
of your retirement exit. The other big thing that people do not know or may not be aware of is that with your 401ks, your retirement accounts, you do have the ability to tap them without a penalty before 59 and a half. You just have to be very careful how you do it. Because if you do, when you just take a bunch of money out of your IRA trying to pay these bills we're
Right.
talking about, then you can incur a 10% tax penalty plus the tax on top of everything else. So there are ways to do it, but you have to, again, not to belabor the point, but you have to plan it out.
You know, I think a lot of the viewers might not realize that with a 401k versus an IRA, with the 401ks, if you leave it with your employer and you retire at 55, you can actually pull money out without a penalty. You still pay taxes on it, of course, and that's what David was talking about. But with an IRA, if you pulled the money out of an IRA at 55, just in general, then there's going to be a penalty and the taxes. So you have to really make sure that you're doing it the right way.
Yeah, and the right way would include, you're taking what we call systematic withdrawals. There's a tax code provision, section 72T, as you know, Nancy. Our viewers are going, don't care, just tell me how to get the money out. But there's a systematic way of getting the money out. You have to follow the rules, and if you break the rules, penalties and taxes abound. It's ugly. So there are ways. And if you're disabled, of course, there are provisions for that as well. So these are all things you've got to factor into how you're going to draw that money.
But I think the main thing is having the money there in the first place.
Yes.
Right? And that's one of the reasons that Sybil and the rest of us who are saving at least 20% of their income. So just, maxing out as much as you can, whether it's in the 401k or whether it's in a Roth IRA or in a brokerage account, in a mutual fund, in tax advantage life insurance.
Sure.
But just saving, and that's part of that hard part where it's not always easy to retire early, but if you save, that's the first thing.
Yeah, and Nancy and I are both fans of this all of the above approach to planning and saving for your retirement, where you have that Roth, you have the 401k, you have the tax-deferred accounts, you have tax-free accounts, you have this money that's in a non-qualified brokerage account, which is basically money you've put in after tax. We like that. It's like a good energy plan, all of the above. Because you can tap on them and use them to bridge some of these holes and gaps and fill in. And also being able to pull on certain funds if we have a market drop, which is inevitable, it's coming, that you can pull on those funds. And especially if you're taking an early retirement where you may not be able to draw on the bulk of your qualified IRA, 401k type of accounts, you need to be able to pull on other money. So that's a key part of it. What do you say to people who say, well, okay, I'm already retired. Should I think about pulling more on my 401k or less? Should I take out a home equity line and have that pull on? Do you like those ideas?
Well, I think I like having flexibility. So you look at the circumstances. So let's say, for example, we have high income taxes or a market drop. So instead of pulling from the 401k, which is taxable and invested,
Sure.
then maybe using the home equity line as a bridge. But that's why I like having clients to have different options. And it actually kind of makes it fun for us. It's like, okay, it's like solving a problem.
Yeah.
Like, how can we do that? But the one of the issues in retirement is the tax drag. So if you can find some tax advantage or tax-free ways to pull money out, like using the home equity, I think that makes a difference.
Yeah, the key thing is not to pull all your money from the IRA, unless that's all you have. And we understand that that may be the case, just depending on how you've accumulated your financial resources. But having the ability to pull on those different accounts, it can't be emphasized enough, because there might be a period where you need to pull from that cash account to avoid, like you said, Nancy, the pulling from an account that is down in value. All like to buy on sale, not sell on sale, right?
Yeah.
So being able to do that, but the tax consequences, you want to be careful. You don't want to pull a whole bunch from an IRA one year and then pull from cash the next. Ideally, you do what Nancy and I recommend. You levelize your income, your taxable income, by drawing from all of these different sources. And that is even more important when we talk about this early retirement, because you've got to be so careful with those tax accounts.
When you think about early retirement too, so if someone retires at 50, and they live to 100, right? They've worked for, well, they haven't even worked for 50
Right.
years. They've lived for 50 years, and then they have to support themselves for 50 years. So the tax drag can make a big difference.
Yeah.
And then also just planning how they're going to take the income stream. Yeah,
Very
but and if we
important.
look back to my really happy neighbor who is just hiking right now, or whatever she's doing, she's doing some kind of a 100-mile bike ride or something too, that basically for her, she saved well ahead of when she's going to retire. So they started saving 100% of her income ahead of when she's going to retire. Well, she's a little extreme,
Well,
right?
I tell you, Nancy, I tell you what, we'll have people go to the website. We'll have them check out Forbes.com for more of your articles on this subject. I'm so glad you're with us. You can also go to PlanStrongerTV.com, learn more about what Nancy's doing and more information on our subject today. Thanks for being with me, Nancy.
Thanks for having me.